Hello everyone and welcome to this behind the scenes video for Hardware Unboxed. Of course, it's Tim here and we're going to be going through and having a look at the office that I use for producing all the videos and doing a lot of benchmarking for sort of the laptops and displays and all sorts of things that you would see on the channel. This is an area that I think might have been in the background of some of the videos very early on as in between, moving houses and that sort of thing. But yeah, this is a very important area for us. Basically, this is just a bedroom in my house and it's not very well decorated or anything. So there's no really interesting things on the walls or anything like that. I keep most of those blank, but it's about 3 by 3 meters. So a fairly standard bedroom size that you might use, but obviously without a bed, you can fit in plenty of desk space and storage space. So that's always nice. And the room that I actually use to film the videos is my garage. That's a much larger room. It's a lot more suited to filming videos, but this is perfect for me and sort of the space that I need for testing a whole bunch of stuff. So you'll see that there's a lot of stuff around the place I haven't bothered to clean up in here whatsoever, so you can sort of see how I use this room in sort of its natural environment. But basically we're going to go through and show you pretty much everything that's on the desk and sort of around the place to sort of see what we keep out, what we use from day to day, and some of the things that you might typically find in my office if you ever sort of just walked in there unannounced. So as you can sort of see here, very standard sort of IKEA desks and that sort of thing that we use here. And we'll get to this side, which is where my main system sits in this part of the room a bit later. But firstly, we have this part of the desk, which I normally use for all sorts of testing equipment and all that sort of thing. So as you sort of see here, normally we'd put monitors, laptops, everything in this sort of space, and that's easy access for me to sort of write up my opinions and stuff on my desktop, right next to it. So very handy to have all that amount of space to be able to do stuff with. And in this section at the moment, it's currently being used for a big pile of display testing gear, among other things. So basically we started doing some more in-depth monitor testing with things like response times, if you didn't see that in the Viotech monitor review, and a few more reviews coming up. We'll go a bit more in-depth into all this stuff later in a separate video to show you how all of that works. But the key thing here is that, yes, there is a lot of different stuff here available to show you guys. So in this corner down here, if I could get the camera to focus, let's use manual focus, easy. There we go. This is the Thorlabs sensor that performs the key part of our response time testing, which is this thing right here, in case you were wondering. This little sensor here, and we'll show that off in a bit more detail in a future video, but that's a very handy piece of equipment there. What we've got here is a mouse that I've modified. I showed this off in the live stream, but basically I modified that with a BNC connector on the end, as you can see there. And that allows us to figure out when any inputs to a system are coming on an oscilloscope and use that for some of the response time testing that we've been doing. Right here we have that oscilloscope that we use for all the testing. It's very handy. It's a nice sort of newish one. It's got USB output. It's also able to do a whole bunch of measurements very, very easily, making things like our rise time and fall time testing all automated so that we don't need to use any cursors or anything like that. Dual input, wide bandwidth, everything that you would want for this sort of testing. Bought it, of course, specialized for this. Here we've got a big pile of all sorts of things. You'll find things like probes for the oscilloscope that we haven't been using just yet. There's some things related to lenses that I haven't put away in the studio just yet. And down here, if you've seen these before, these are CPU trays. This one in particular is an AMD Ryzen CPU tray, and inside there, even though it's been taped up at the moment, inside there is a Ryzen 7 2700X that I haven't put in my test system just yet. So that's right there and available to, well, I should be putting that in there at some point. And for those test systems, we did build both of these on the channel at some point, but both of those are down here. So we have on the left, this system in the Corsair. That is the AMD 2nd Gen Ryzen test system, and then on the left here we have the 8700K test system in the Be Quiet case. So both of those I just use them for all sorts of random testing that we might need to do. Sometimes it's used for displays, sometimes it's used for comparing to laptops, and planning to do a bit more in-depth testing that specifically uses those. The game testing that I've mentioned a couple of times in the past will be done on those sort of systems. And yeah, that sort of will be able to help Steve out with some of his content, complement some of the stuff he does, in addition to all the laptop and display testing that we do. This laptop here is actually running a benchmark as we speak. This is the HP Envy X360 13-inch. So this is the first 13-inch Ryzen mobile laptop that I've had the opportunity to review. It's currently running our handbrake test, X265 encoding, which on this sort of laptop takes well over 2.5 hours to complete. And yeah, very interested to see. Of course, we're getting data at the moment, but it will be very interesting to see how this system ends up performing, considering it's 13-inch and has that powerful CPU inside. So really interested to see how that one goes, and I'm very excited for Ryzen Mobile and more of these sort of form factors. But yeah, very interesting to get that in. It could be a couple of weeks before you see the review of this on the channel, simply because it takes time to test these things, but that's currently in the works at the moment. Down in this section, we have the pile of review units and laptops that I use often, or from time to time, I guess you'd have to say. In the front there, we have the Acer Predator Triton 700, 7700 HQ and GTX 1060 inside that one. It's very nice to use that when I'm out and about, say at an event or something, and I need to edit videos. I typically use that, and for live streaming I use that from time to time as well. And in the back there, you'll see a pile of all sorts of different laptops. We've got my new daily driver, the LG Gram, on the top, the 13-inch model. Just below that here is a Dell XPS 13 from a couple of years back, but that's Broadwell era. We've got a Chewy laptop which uses the Atom processors from Intel, and below that a MacBook that someone asked me to fix, and I haven't got around to that. Should probably get on that. It's been a couple of months that I've had that for now. This right here is a very important piece of equipment that I use frequently, probably one of the most frequently used tools, if you could call it that. This is my Crucial MX500 2TB in an external enclosure, as you can see there. And basically this stores all the benchmarks that we use for testing laptops. So it's very important when testing laptops that you get the benchmarks onto the drive that the system actually uses, because that can influence the performance of the system. Normally, if we were doing a lot of testing, we would simply clone drives and chuck those in systems. But as far as the laptop testing, you need to also make sure you're running the benchmarks on the storage that you get included with the system. So we have this external drive to sort of copy all the stuff to and from, well, mostly from that drive to the main drive in the system. And yeah, 2 TB is, at the moment, is plenty for the games and benchmarks. 1 TB was cutting it a bit fine, but 2 TB is fine. I've got there one of the Cooler Master toolkits that you would have seen in one of our Computex videos. And in the front here, this is a Xiaomi 16,000 milliamp hour power bank. It's about 62 watt hours, so it's very nice. It would be nice if it had fast charging, but it doesn't. We'll show you behind here for some of the other things that we've got here. This box there that I haven't opened up yet is a Dell G3 laptop. So it's a gaming laptop. We got that in because it has the i7 8750H in it, along with the GTX 1050 Ti, so we can compare that to Kaby Lake G that you would have seen on the channel a little while ago. Here we have the Star Wars Ultimate Collector's Series Lego Millennium Falcon, one of the largest Lego sets ever made. In fact, I still think it's the largest one. Pretty expensive, haven't built it yet. A lot of people have been asking me to build that on the channel. Not sure if I'll do that, depends, but it's been sitting there. Here is the Acer KG251, which you would have seen a review of on the channel a couple of months ago. 1080p, 24-inch, 144 Hertz. Nice little cheap monitor, would recommend it. And here's the really ugly curtain that whoever built and designed this house has been using. That's just really horrific, but sometimes you've got to put up with that stuff. And you can see the mess of cables that we use and all sorts of other fun stuff around the place. And yeah, we'll just get into sort of the second part. Over here, some of the things you would see down below here, interestingly enough at the moment. This is my Logitech Z680 speaker system. That was a speaker system, 5.1 surround, that was launched in like 2003. I've had mine for a very long time, and it's still been working perfectly since the day I got it. A few issues with the control unit, but no reason to upgrade at the moment, so it's a good investment getting those sort of speakers. And there's my Logitech as well, steering wheel and pedals. Currently been playing a bit of Wreckfest on my PC, which is, I use the same PC for editing and for gaming. So whenever I want to get into some Wreckfest, I just bring up the wheel, put the pedals down and get going. It's the ultimate way to play PC racing games, of course, is to use the wheel. Got to do that. So what else have we got here? See some interesting things. A lot of people don't use these anymore because you can, get it on a computer and do everything that you need with a calculator on a computer. But I like using it simply because it's really quick to use. You don't have to open up everything. You can just have it by your side. and just perform a whole bunch of calculations easily. So I still find a use for a physical calculator. I know a lot of people wouldn't, but that's something that I find handy. And the TI-36X is one of the best non-graphing calculators that you can get there. And when I was an engineer, it was actually allowed in our exams, despite the fact that it could do a lot of things that other calculators couldn't. This is a Windows 10 USB stick, in case you're wondering. This was shipped to me a couple of weeks ago. These are just some stand equipment for lighting and that sort of thing that you would normally use. There's some of the speakers for the Z680, I believe it's called. There's the i1 Display Pro that we normally use for display color testing. Also planning to upgrade that very shortly to a newer one that potentially has improved accuracy for things like HDR testing. This is a keyboard that you don't really need to upgrade your keyboard too often, I guess, but this is my Corsair K90 or K95. It's one of those. Don't remember the exact model name, but this was released many, many years ago. It's got mostly mechanical keys. This was in the time that mechanical keyboards were sort of more transitioning into popularity. So most of the main keys like these are mechanical, but some of the peripheral keys like the home and end and some of the macro keys over here are not actually mechanical. Normally, well, these days you wouldn't get that. Every single key would be mechanical, but it's fine for me. And yeah, no real reason to upgrade that. Sometimes I use the macro keys, but with its cherry reds, it's just been a really trusty competitor, a trusty companion for me, doing everything. So no real reason to upgrade that. And the same thing that we've got here, this is my Razer Death Adder that I use for everything as well. No reason to upgrade that either. It's really comfortable. One of the mice that I find particularly comfortable. Great for gaming, great for doing everything really. So no real reason to upgrade that. This is my phone, my current daily driver, the OnePlus 6. Interested in doing a sort of look at the smartphones that I recommend on the channel. Not sure if that'll do well, but I'll do it anyway, just to see how that goes. These are some SD cards. We've got a 128 gig Samsung micro SD. Some of the SDs, you'll see this one here, for example. This is the brand that I normally use for shooting. This is the SanDisk Extreme series. Very, very fast to copy the files off. One of the fastest SDs of this sort of specification that you can get. Been really happy with the performance of those, and they're not the cheapest, but they certainly are fine. You'll see here that's well overexposed in this shot, but this is the Acer Predator X34 that I use for everything, for gaming, for video editing, everything. Love the ultra wides, 3440 by 1440, 100 Hertz. That's a great monitor. This one needs to be upgraded. This one is just a BenQ 1080p 60 Hz, a very basic monitor. No height adjust, which is why you can see it's on this Asus H61 motherboard box that I've had sitting around for a long time. So yeah, basically need to upgrade that at some point. Hopefully to something 4K I think would be good for the video editing workflow, but it's actually a perfectly fine monitor, one of the sort of earlier VA panels that came out. This is an NVIDIA Shield controller. You get this with the Shield TV, some models, but I use that for gaming. I actually find it quite comfortable. It's Bluetooth, works well, supported in all sorts of games. So yeah, I really like that one. Very easy to do. Down here, this is probably where we'll end this part of the look into my office. This is my main desktop system that I use for everything. Again, gaming, video editing, production, all sorts of that stuff. This is very, very similar to the build that you would have seen at the start of, it would have been the start of last year with first gen Ryzen. So very, very simple. Ryzen 7 1700X inside there. Got the Titan XP in there as a graphics card, and a few changes compared to when I originally built the system, but it still has everything that I need for an editing rig. I would like to upgrade some of the cooling just to make it a little bit quieter during operation. The front fans and the CPU cooler aren't the quietest things in the world, but it serves its purpose perfectly fine, and yeah, really have no complaints about that. So there's a few other things to show in the office, but we've shown a lot of stuff at the moment. So, and I think this video is probably over 10 minutes long at this point. So we'll stop this here, and you'll be able to see next week when we get to, doing the second part of this sort of office tour. We'll show you the rest of the stuff. Probably won't be anywhere near as interesting, the second part, but we'll get into that in the very next video.